honestly, it was several months ago, I walked into the auditorium for the first time. And I shouldn't say for the first time, but with this mindset to say, okay, what would my first impression be if I was somebody coming in here, my age bracket or older or younger, what would my first impression be? And what I saw wasn't as welcoming as I would hope it would be. I think for the people that I've heard from, many people, my age or older especially, I hear about the knee problems, the back problems, the hip problems that make getting in and out of these chairs challenging and uncomfortable. Yeah, you know what I mean. And although, God's provided us these chairs for 64 years, that's amazing stewardship. Yeah, praise God. Isn't that amazing? And so they've been wonderful. But as I also look in there, I think, okay, it's not a welcoming room. It's kind of dark. The chairs don't seem comfortable at first impression, or welcoming, I guess I'd say. The carpeting, the flooring isn't. But I also thought, okay, when 15, 17 years ago now, in 2005, when Building for Our Children's Children happened with the education wing there, I think, okay, those children back then were 5 to 15 years old. That was 16 years ago. And so those children now would be 22 to 32 years old. And I thought, okay, we ministered to them by building that. Now as they leave that area and they're coming into the sanctuary, how can we make them feel welcome? And I say that not to help people to be comfortable or not to make people, feel like they have a status because they're going in a nice room. But basically, my intent with all of this is going back to helping people to know God through the Bible, helping people to worship God, and helping to strengthen families by removing hindrances or obstacles that might keep them from being comfortable going into there and sitting in those chairs and feeling like, wow, this is a place that's uplifting. And, hopefully you know what I'm saying. But I guess I would liken it to in the past when leaders who were wise and forward-thinking added air conditioning to sanctuaries, right? Like this one. Moved the restrooms indoors, right? Exactly. Added Sunday school rooms and a nursery. Added the youth center that God's used in so many church youth groups, and the men's ministry group, and the church I grew up in Mount Laurel comes out and does a men's retreat there every year. So I just see it as becoming more welcoming and just basically extending the Tabernacle's heritage for the current and future generations to your children and their children, as that sign says, for building for our children's children. And thinking of those children now not being 5 to 15 anymore, but 15, 16 years later being 20 to 30 years old, making the room a welcoming place. And so I don't see it as rebuilding an auditorium. I see it as investing in a sanctuary. Because also 3 years ago when I arrived, it was generally referred to as the auditorium, but I really see it as a sanctuary and a place where we want to worship God, know God, and that our families would be strengthened. The tabernacle has been for more than 140 years, and my hope would be, my prayer would be, will continue to be a beacon of light to the Ocean City community and to the region, to vacationers and residents in this area, that we would be able to communicate to them the only way, truth, and life that they desperately, more and more desperately, that our world needs to know, right? As this world just goes crazy in so many ways. So for that reason, we're looking at renovating the auditorium into more of what I consider now the sanctuary. That's how I refer to it even now. And for those reasons, again, it comes back to the purpose of the tabernacle. So I'm going to go into a brief presentation now. It's a 1-minute video. Now I'm going to interrupt it a handful of times so I can walk you through it. But I want you to see this, and it's some pretty cool technology. That's the first picture of it, and I'll explain that before we get started. It's a 1-minute video of a simulated walkthrough of what the renovation would look like. And so as you look at that to start, I want you to know that we haven't determined yet what the colors would be, what the wall decor would look like. Those two top pictures up there, I'm not going with those, but that's what the architect put in there. So don't think about those things, just get a general sense. in the middle there is the picture you see there is actually a monitor that he put here so that there could still be overflow out here and people could watch. But anyway, a lot of those details haven't been finalized yet, but I wanted you to know that. As you also see in that photo, or right there, you'll see that there's a center door and an aisle. So basically what that means is this window behind me gets converted to a doorway, and that within, the seating is rearranged so that there's actually a center aisle and more aisles going out. Right now there's not a center aisle, and there would be. So that's a change that you'll notice, especially you women looking and thinking, okay, could somebody have a wedding in here or something like that? And we don't know. I mean, that's what people are thinking. And I'm not saying we would go there. That would be a different decision for our board. But all I'm saying is that the seating arrangement would be a little bit different. So as you see the colors that are on the walls in the video, please pay no attention to those. They haven't been nailed down yet. As you see the colors of the seating or the style of the seating, this is just what the architect proposed based on his experience. We're blessed with an architect with a company called Church Architects. You can look at their work on churcharchitects.com. That's all they do is architect work for churches, and they've done from very liturgical churches, mainline denominations, to contemporary churches. And as I expressed to our staff last week, our intent would be that this is really neither. I don't intend for this, it's not going to be a place with stained glass. It's also not going to be a contemporary style, but it's going to be something that either way, based on what's going on up front with the worship, either style of worship, people would feel comfortable and that the style of what they say wouldn't detract from their worship. So that said, we're going to walk through this video together. I'm going to ask our video man, Warren, to start it for us, and he's just going to go through the first 5 seconds and stop it, and I'll narrate a little bit. So right there you see a welcome center around one of the pillars over here. And that's a portable unit, but it's something we've determined is necessary for people when they come in. They could go there and ask the questions, most likely, where's the restroom? But they could also, there's other things there, like we'll have the hearing devices that we already have at the sound booth, but it'll be more local. We'll have the CDs from prior services. We'll have somebody there who can answer the questions, that can connect them with our email list or our contact list, give us the information that we could continue to keep them updated, that they could find that information out before or after the service. The only other change in this room, in this renovation that we're describing, is that the room that has the open door back there, we call that the old green room. That's where the green room used to be, where the musicians or speakers would wait. We've since moved that to the back of the facility where there's a restroom back there, and it's a more comfortable room. But that room right there has a small restroom in the left side of it. That restroom is going to be expanded with an entrance into the narthex here, and that will become a family restroom. That will be for families with young children that need to go in there and have more space to be in there together to do that. It will also be for any of us who have a family member or a friend in a wheelchair or something like that needs somebody to accompany them in there. We had an incident this past year where, for one event here, a man went walking in with his wife in a wheelchair into the ladies' room, and I knew that because I saw the women scattering out the door. And then we had women lined up at the door. So the architect had already presented this plan to us, and that was just affirmation we needed it. So those are the only two things that would be changing in the narthex. I should also add, nothing's changing with the exterior of the facility. The outside tabernacle will still look the same. If you see some work going on in early October, it's because we're going to have the roof replaced on this part behind me. But that's what will be going on then. So, Warren, I'm going to ask you to move it on, please. Great, thank you. And so this is as we enter this new sanctuary. As you look at those pictures, I want you to know there's still close to 1,000 seats in there, which is, right now we have, I think it's 996 chairs. It'll be still close to that number. The old chairs are basically connected across the rows. So as we think about what we could do with them as we move those out of there, if somebody was able and willing to come and take away rows at a time, which is unlikely, we could talk about that. There are nameplates on many of those who were given by families in memory of a loved one. And so we're going to save all those. Haven't figured out exactly if we'll reuse those somewhere in the facility, as somebody suggested, but we'll certainly at least keep those so that family members can attain those from us. We're not going to throw those away by any means. Again, the colors are still to be determined. So the biggest challenge in this room, because when I walked in there initially, my thinking was, we need to update these chairs, we need to update the floor covering, we need to update the lighting above, and we need to update the ceiling that is kind of dark, and that helps the room to be dark. And those were my priorities. As we talked to the architect with all of his experience basically said, the biggest challenge you have in that room right now is the slope of the floor. And I knew there was a slope, but I hadn't really thought about it being such a big challenge. But because that slope is like this, at the same level all the way down, if you put a chair in at an angle to face the middle, the podium, the pulpit up there, that chair would be sitting like this, which would be very uncomfortable, and obviously nobody could do that. And so he said the first step architecturally would be that concrete would need to be poured over the floor, and so that the flooring would be at an angle in every single chair location that a chair could comfortably face the center of the stage, to face the pulpit. I thought, wow, that's amazing. That obviously increased the price significantly, but that's the first step. That gives us some other benefits, because down the lower doors, the lower exit doors of the sanctuary are where the flooding happened with Sandy. We had flooding up there and damage. It didn't come up to the back of the sanctuary because of the ramp floor. But by laying this concrete, it's going to enable us to lift those bottom doors so that even the outside would be elevated up some, and flooding like that wouldn't happen. Whenever we have bad rain like tonight, if you go out there's puddles there and there's flooding, and at times it's impassable. And so it would solve that issue as well. Excuse me. So that's the biggest issue, is that slope floor and having to pour the concrete in there so that it becomes more of a bowl shape. Becoming also providing opportunity for circular seating to go around the stage. So right now we have those front areas where there's no seating, but with this concrete, he's redesigned the seating so that it could come in all around the stage, and every seat would have a good view of the front of the stage and the screens with the words on them for the songs. And you'll see how he drew that up in just a moment. We would have new carpet tiles in there, somewhat like this. I'm not saying they'd be this color or like this, but what we did here was we put in square tiles so that if one got damaged or stained, we could replace the one, which is the way that people do it these days, companies do it. Or else in certain areas, probably under the seating, we would have some kind of a nice vinyl flooring like you might have in your home, something like that these days. That would be water repellent. And then new ceiling cover panels. What I want to communicate first is the yellow circles up there only represent where lighting would be. That's not the lighting. It's because the lighting hasn't been determined yet. So that's why those yellow circles are there. And then Warren, if you move it, please, forward. Appreciate that. So what we have over to the left here as you enter, the sound, the audio, and the video booth have been combined just to one side. So it frees up the other side. They've been combined on this side because you may have been here some weeks ago when our young man working on the sound side had to sprinted across the back during an event because something needed to be communicated or to happen, and he was pretty quick. It amazed me. It's like flash, but there are communication needs, and so right now they'll have devices to talk back and forth. But it makes so much more sense for them to be there in the same place, especially with technology these days and live streaming and things like that. So that's part of what's going on there. As you also saw in that little picture, there are places for wheelchairs like that, empty places for wheelchairs, not just in the back anymore, but all the way throughout the different seating. He created spaces for that. As you can also see there, on the side windows on each side, the top part, we'd have those blinds removed, and we would put some kind of tinting in there that would keep the glare from coming in. But we'd be removing those blinds that we're always struggling with, and that's just kind of, when we leave them closed, it makes the room too dark, and when we open them, there's glare issues. So we'll be taking care of that as well. And then, again, Warren, please. And basically, I'm going to ask you, because I know there'd be so many questions, if for the sake of me being the only thing standing between you and dinner, if we could please just hold back questions. Talk to me privately afterwards, either tonight or when I follow up with you to get your input and to communicate with you further. So we'll hold off questions until those times. You can talk to me tonight if you want. I'd be happy to do that. But as soon as I'm finished here, we're going to go into serving dinner. So the next view, please. Thank you, Warren, is you can see that there's a simple cross up front, which becomes the focal point of the front wall. You can see that the Ocean City Tabernacle is a backdrop there just below it. If you can read that on that wood beam, it says Ocean City Tabernacle. Nothing fancy, but just something that would provide that wording behind like the videos so that if somebody's watching it, they know where they're watching. And as we have pictures and videos later, that would be in the backdrop, but nothing fancy. The front wall is all projectionable, meaning that you could, if you wanted to, on those side walls or in that wall where the words of the songs are there, we could put stained glass up there. You wouldn't know the difference. You would think it was stained glass on that wall if we chose to do that for some kind of event or something like our traditional service or what have you. And it's curved so that when people are all the way up front on either side of the stage, they can still see the words to the songs up there. That's why the top is curved on that front wall, as you see in just a minute. There's also, to the left and the right of the stage there, backstage exit and entry, which will improve our ability to do what we do. There's also, behind the stage right now, there are big wood boxes back there that were for old projection systems that aren't utilized. We're going to convert those to storage back there in kind of a backstage area, perhaps. The stage is going to be larger than it is now. We're still working through exactly how that'll be. This may not be the final design, but we're going to make it larger and make sure that it serves the kind of groups that also come in, whether it be an orchestra or a choir or somebody from the community coming in for an event. And then you can see the grand piano is still there and the organ's still there, although he got the pictures wrong. It should be on that grand piano, still Carolyn Lothian sitting there, and on that organ, still Jeff Sills sitting there. Right? There they are. Amen. Yeah, that's good. Okay, Warren, would you advance to the last photo, please? And so this one's going to take us all the way up front and then turn around, and all you're going to see here is basically what I want to share with you is the new seating will be cushioned and upholstered. There'll be, if not all, many armchairs, and it's a theater-type seating, so the seats still go up so we can fit more seating in there. That's why the seats need to be like that. There you go. Okay, Warren, you can progress it, please. And so, as we go back to the back door, it'll stop here in a moment. You can see there at the back door again, that center door as people exit, rather than just having the window here now and the side doors. So basically, what I want to close with are a couple of key points. First of all, you can imagine the budget for this project elevated more than we initially intended, as it always does. But to be able to do it right, as he said, to be able to lay the concrete in a way that all the seats face the front, to put in the right kind of seats, flooring, ceiling, lighting, tinted windows, what we're doing on the front wall there, and the room, the family restroom, and all those things, the project gets up to an amount of about $2 million. And so it's significant, but if you compare it to other things going on in our world today, somebody in here in the construction business or the business background would say, wow, that's not a surprise. But I also want to say the time frame of the project is, as I said, in early October, our plan is to replace the roof in this sanctuary, and then we would hope to start this project in mid-October. Now, initially, my intent was to start it some months down the road, to have a season where we could strive to raise money first and connect people to the project. But then when the architect and the construction people start talking about the duration of this project, they said, well, if this is going to be ready for next summer season and ideally the beginning of April, because my prayer would be we have this ready a few weeks before mid-April so we can still have a Live and Last Supper in here. I'd love to be able to do that. That's one of my favorite things we do here every year. In fact, Carolyn, I'll go ahead and ask you. I've made a note to myself. Could you please get us a picture of the Live and Last Supper that we could put on the wall in here? Thank you. That's special. So again, I'm going to follow up with you in the coming weeks about input for the strategic plan, how you think we could better minister to you, your family, your community. And then I'm also asking you, I'm going to also follow up with you about this renovation project and just ask you now to prayerfully consider how you could financially invest in this improvement for the tabernacle ministry. Perhaps consider a way what could be committed over the next 3 years and pledges. But basically, just a way of helping update our sanctuary for the people that come in there, the adults, the children, this generation, the next generation. And again, the bottom line is to help our community and to help the people that visit this community from around the region and around the country to know God through the Bible, to worship God, and to help to strengthen families. That's why we're here.
Great presentation, yeah? You know, you are the light of the world. Your world is Ocean City, New Jersey. You know, I think sometimes we think of being missionaries in somewhere, like Africa or India or somewhere, but we're the light of the world, and this is your world. And talking to Carl about Ocean City Tabernacle, like, wow. And I'm just thinking, since you're the light of Ocean City, New Jersey, you really need to keep the lights on, like, all year long. And I love what Pastor was talking about, the vision. I don't know about you, but I'm just feeling like there's so much darkness. You know, we need to keep the lights on every chance that we get. And Pastor did a fantastic job of casting the vision. And if I lived here, I'd come here and help y'all be a light. It's very exciting. But anytime there's a vision that is cast, then we know it's not up to Pastor Jay to make it happen, right? It's up to everybody in the room. So I just feel like it's a worthy cause.